The other thing we tell them is the contrast in what our Bill of Rights are and what the rights are that are in the Rio Declaration, which is the rights that Agenda 21 intends to use. The rights that the that we have, the unalienable rights, in our Constitution, in our documents, were given to us by our Creator. It's in the Constitution. The rights that the United Nations and the Rio Declaration are those rights which they can be taken away. They're given to us by men and they can be taken away by men. So that's the difference in the two rights. Now, if you read them, you know, they don't seem to be very, they don't seem to be too terrible. But then when you start comparing them, they're awful. And by the way, one of the things that we wind up telling them on the last slide, is that the Communist Manifesto, and this has been said to you already today, is that the abolition of property it's important, that it's got to belong to the government, it can't belong to individuals. There's the other piece that we bring in, and that is the 3 E's of sustainable development: equity, economy, and an environment. And there's we try to keep the things short so that you'll be able to not get in real depth on it. You don't have a lot of time. They're only going to give you 30 minutes, but they'll remember this 30 minutes. If you go into the detail of what they really need to know, they won't. However, once you've got their attention, you can get them to go back and learn everything. One of the other things we make sure we point out to them, here in Florida, this is very important, because Harvey Rubin is a clerk of the courts for Miami-Dade County. He is also the head clerk of the court for all of the state of Florida. Harvey Rubin was the vice director for ICLEI in the United States. And he was vice director. Actually, ICLEI, Miami was one of the 12 pilot cities in the United States that ICLEI was brought into. And if you look at Miami, they're a perfect model for what the United Nations would like to have. They've got green everything, and they've got environmental people running everything. And another thing you need to know about these meetings that you're going to go to at the county, you need to make sure you take as many people with you as you can. Every one of these meetings will have every environmentalist in your area will be there. Your county commissioners are bombarded in every meeting by the environmentalists for trying to advance their agenda. You have to tip your county commissioners to realize that those environmentalists do not represent the county. They only represent the environmentalists. And they may outnumber people at most meetings. But once you get that point across, your county commissioners will usually realize that, you know, the same people show up always at all of the meetings, and they're always pushing some environmental issue. And they're always costing you money because it's taking money out of your pocket to do what they're wanting the county commission to do. We also talk about what you've already been told about Maurice Strong, and we also talk a little bit about the preamble to Agenda 21, and these are things that, as you're reading through the script, you know, we don't get in a lot of detail on them, just enough that they know that what you've told them is necessary. And we keep going into sustainable development, what it is, and then a breakdown of the different pieces of the 3 E's. And of course, between the economy, environment, and education, the environment is where the environmentalists come in. And of course, Genesis, the Bible, tells us that The earth was created for us. God gave that earth to us to take care of. It's our domain. The earth is not taking care of us. We have dominion over everything on the planet. It's not the other way around. And those in the Genesis, the two verses in Genesis are quoted to them that you will read to them in this briefing. The next thing we go into is ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Issues, which if you look at ICLEI's website, it's still called ICLEI, but it's now called Local Governments for Sustainability or something like that. It's a different name underneath ICLEI, but it's still ICLEI. ICLEI has just they bring it into your local communities, and they've got just a ton of really wonderful programs to help your people get the job done. Now, another organization that we don't talk about here, but that you need to be aware of, that's basically an organization that works hand in hand with ICLEI, is the ICMA. That's the International City County Managers Association. These people train all your bureaucrats. They work hand in hand with ICLEI. They train all their people how to be able to manipulate you and to get their green environments through. Okay. The other thing that you'll find is that I've broken this thing. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to get back to the slide in front of this one. Huh? Okay. Okay. This slide here is important to your city or county officials. That little star diagram there is in the toolkits that ICLEI brings in to work with your city and county officials. They'll recognize that. What we found out is you talked about the Vision 2030 plan. Our city of Ocala has a Vision 2035 plan. And we went into it and we went to try to find out where it came from, and it was prepared by consultants. So we went back and looked at where the consultants were, and it turns out the head people and the consultants were members of ICLEI. And they were following the ICLEI formats of all of the things that they do to get their agenda through. They have all these stakeholder meetings. They define the stakeholders. You'd be surprised at who stakeholders are in making decisions on your property. One of the stakeholders in Ocala was a high school class. Okay? Yeah. Another set of stakeholders was a group out of one of the kind of the areas of the where poor people live. And then other stakeholders were, they had 5 sets of stakeholders. They defined them all. And then they came up and developed this plan. Now, in the stakeholder meetings, and you'll see this, if any of you have heard of Heather Gass from California, they have filmed one of the stakeholder meetings. And the government uses, the facilitators, they go through a set of questions to you that are like, which is more important to you? Your left leg or your right arm? And you get to make a choice. And so what goes in their report is whichever of those 2 things you chose. That's a consensus. So they can take the other one because you didn't think it was that important. So that's extreme, but that's the way it's done. Okay? And then if you start to say something that, I don't believe this process, then they marginalize you. That's the way the stakeholder meetings go. But at any rate, they, unfortunately for them, they documented every one of their stakeholder meetings. They also documented who was the people that were running the meeting. And it turned out to be, they had the consultants that worked for ICLEI running their meetings. So their plan wasn't valid. ICLEI comes in and gives them a treasure trove of information. All right, this next slide is funding sources. That slide that really goes there is 3 columns long and about 30 things on a page. Do you believe that one of the funding sources for ICLEI happens to be the EPA? Another one of the funding sources for ICLEI is George Soros. Does anybody here know who George Soros is? And a lot of our government executive branch agencies do fund ICLEI. All right, the next slide under there you see is the map. And this is the map that Dr. Kaufman put together in 1994 that shows people, actually this is the wildlands map, and it shows you all these different colors of where people can be. The black areas are where people can live. This map, when it's full size, you can hardly see any black areas on it. Turns out we only occupy, I think it's less than 5% of the, where people live is less than 5% of the whole property in the United States. And they want it to be, they want us only in those dark areas. The last thing you do when you leave the county commission is we've given you a list of suggestions to leave them with so that you can tell them what they need to do in order to get your property rights straightened out. The main thing in here is the federal grants. They have to quit taking the federal grants. There's strings tied to those grants, and those strings take your property rights away. In conclusion, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness were given to us by our founding fathers. We want our county commissioners, our city councilmen, our elected officials. The government's job is to protect those rights, and that is all their job is. And I thank you.